Unfortunately, GB News and Talk TV have ignored you, which I'm very surprised about.
We have to reform our society and our way of life to protect our way of life.
We know it's the most corrupt council in Greater Manchester, if not probably the northwest of England, maybe the even country, who knows.
And he demanded I take down my post. I said, I'm not taking down my post, I'm going to testify. I've reached out to politicians who claimed they wanted to help on this issue.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is a returning guest again, and he's probably the guest I'm always being asked to get back on the show, because this guy has got things to say and things you need to hear. But first of all, welcome Miah to the show.
Nick, always a pleasure. Yeah, I think the first ever conversation I had was with you, Nick, in terms of an external voice. I think the first ever conversation was you and I 2 years ago now, I think. Yeah.
It would have been longer. I think it was when I was running the first time for Mayor of Greater Manchester, so that would have been about 4 years ago.
Well, there you go. You look as sprightly now as you did then, Nick.
I'm grayer. I'm not any more bald, but I'm definitely grayer. Let's jump into this. Me and you were at a street demonstration in Manchester City Centre over the weekend on Saturday with an organisation we both support called Parents Against Grooming. We both gave our little speech. I wanted to start by saying the feeling in the crowd was more positive than I've noticed before in the last 2 years. I've been going to those street demonstrations and speaking. People seem to have a little bit more about them, a little bit more positivity, a little bit more, finally, things are being discussed about the grooming gangs. You've hit national attention now. Elon Musk is talking about it. Did you feel the same with the people who were there?
Yes, I think we have taken people on a journey, Nick, and I have nothing but love for these people and for what they've done. And I apologize, and I apologized at that meeting. The first thing I apologize for not getting there earlier, not getting there sooner. But what people like us have done is we have looked at it objectively, strategically, and politicized it, so we know what the levers are through which we can deliver the change that these people rightly have, we should be doing for them. They have a right to. So what these people have done is they've gone on a journey with people like me. And when I first came along, Nick, I remember the first time I was speaking for Billy, I was waiting and people were asking me, very critical questions. And some of them were openly prejudiced towards me, thinking I was on some bandwagon. Now, 4 years later, 5 years later, they've realized and accepted that not only am I genuine, not only am I authentic and everything I've gone through, the strategy I have deployed is bearing fruit. This is a political struggle. This needs to be framed in a political way. And it is through this strategy that we and this entire nation will get what we want, which is accountability and justice.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the same conversations. I was talking to a gentleman in the crowd on Saturday who said to me, Nick, I like you, but the first time I met you and saw you speak 2 years ago, I thought you were full of it. I thought, here we go again. Here's another wannabe politician who's turning up to one of our events, who's pretending to be on our side, who's saying all the right things. And if he gets into power, he'll drop us so quick. We won't even see it happening. He goes, but 2.5 years later, you're still here. You come and get every demonstration. You're still speaking about it. He went, I've changed my mind about you now. And he was half being funny, but he was being deadly serious, as in, I've been lied to that many times that I trust no one now. And I said to him, you're perfectly correct in not trusting me and not trusting anyone, because most people are full of it when it comes to this.
And to this day, I look on it and it disappoints me, Nick. But there are mainstream politicians who have jumped on this as a bandwagon for political and personal gain. And you've seen it. I've seen it. I don't need to name anyone. You've seen it. I've seen it. I've reached out to politicians who claimed they wanted to help on this issue. And I've reached out to them to say, you're you're in such and such a place. I have X, Y, or Z who I think you'd benefit from speaking with. Not me, but either survivors or whistleblowers in your town or in your city that I think would give you added depth to what, this issue and develop your understanding so you can more effectively advocate on behalf of this. Zero response, Nick. And I want, and these are conservative politicians in the main. And I'm sorry, zero response. And I've ended up in a place where at a grassroots level, I have nothing but respect for conservative councillors because they've helped me, Nick. They've helped promote this, they've helped challenge this. But at a national level, I still don't think they get it.
I mean, let's be honest, they don't get it. 8 months ago, they were still in power and they're in power for 14 years. If they've not changed, you can't change in 8 months. They know that this issue will damage them slightly less than it's going to damage Labour, but it will damage the Tories. And every time you go national and you speak to a national politician saying, I've got information on this, in your area, I can send it to you. What you're really saying to them is, here is an exploding bomb. Don't know when it's going to go off, but I'm putting it in your hands. And they're going, I don't want to touch this. This could explode in my face. And cowards, I mean, I use this word quite a lot now, but the cowards. I want to ask you about a former MP, Simon Danczuk.
Danczuk, yeah.
Former Labour MP for Rochdale. He's recently come out saying, I knew about this, the cover up, I was told not to say anything. And he got a round of applause. I was screaming at the TV going, you're saying it now? 15 years later, couldn't you have said it when you had the power of being an MP? Couldn't you have sacrificed your career on the altar of being courageous and let your career go, but highlighted it all 15 years ago? Because we'd be further along the line than we are now. Is that fair, or am I being cruel?
I don't think you're being cruel at all. And I try and be pragmatic when I look at this. So first and foremost, I'm thankful he has spoken out, even though it's as late as he has, because from a selfish point of view, Nick, he validated and confirmed what I've been saying, that these were political decisions made to protect the bloc Muslim vote. He validated that. And this is a former Labour Party MP validating that. And he made the Telegraph, I think I saw it was in the Telegraph, and I think it was on GB News as well. So I can't reach those audiences, Nick. I've tried those platforms, even GB News, they're not for speaking with me because I take it maybe too far for their comfort zone. I'm not saying I'm in any way rude. I don't think any of your people who view me would say I'm rude or aggressive or anything. No, I try to come across reasonable and reasoned and explain things in a thorough manner. But I'm thankful he finally said it. And of course, I'm so disappointed, Nick, because you and I both know why he said it. He said it because he'd been kicked out of the Labour Party. So now he's no longer in that group. He can now, he's got a different reason to speak out. Do I believe he's spoken out for the right reasons? That's the question, Nick. Do I believe it's not whether the timing was right, it's whether he's spoken out for the right reasons. And I would say to everyone, sadly, I believe he's spoken out for himself and to benefit himself. There's a guy in Birmingham as well. I forget his name. Is it Khalid? It was the MP down there, the big burly guy. I think he used to be a rugby player. Embroiled in scandals down there, covered up, but in the public domain. All of this is in the public domain. He got took out, I think, in the end by one of those sectarian MPs. He's forever. You'll see him on GB News now, somehow becoming an advocate of this. He's not an advocate of this. This is this political opportunism by some of these people, which takes me back to the gentleman who spoke to you at the rally on Saturday. They've seen this so often And sadly, the vast majority of those who occupy this space come from uh, a position of political opportunism, how it will benefit their political careers. Now, it's not for you, and it's not for me, because one, whilst I stood to be a politician, Nick, I don't come from a political I'm not a politician. I stood because I felt I had to stand, not because I wanted to stand or I was under any doubt of any chance of winning. I was grateful I kept my deposit, and I was grateful that the work I did and the leaflets we distributed kept the campaign going, which then brought us to January when all this blew up. Because if we hadn't kept going the way we had kept going, when it was of no value to me, Nick, it was of no value to you. We kept going because this was the right thing to do. I was stood in a space on Saturday where some of those people, politically, ideologically, want nothing to do with someone who looks like me. But that doesn't matter. I have to stand in those places and I have to do what's right. And over time, people will change. But I feel like it has changed because now the conversations is no longer if this happened. It's not even why this happened. It's the conversation now we're having in the national discourse is what are we going to do about it? And that's where the division is. The establishment want to cover it up, and the rest of us want to lift the lid off this once and for all, and whatever comes, comes. And that's why we're winning, Nick. That's why we're winning.
I know we're winning. And one of the reasons why I know we're winning is because people now are jumping on our side. They may be doing it for the wrong reasons. They may be doing it for selfish reasons. But people tend not to jump to a losing side.
And that's why I remind myself not to dwell on, well, why are you joining us? That sort of focus in my mind. I remind myself, Raja, you need to be better than this. This isn't about you. This isn't about what's gone on in the past. This is about what we need as a movement to get over the line. And we need these people with us, Nick, which is why I go back to Simon Danchuk, and I'm grateful he spoke out even though it was perhaps a couple of decades later than he should have done. Because all this goes back to the likes of Anne Cryer, because Anne Cryer did speak out, and she was demonized. What happened to that woman is a national shame.
And for people who don't know who Anne Cryer was, could you just briefly tell us who she was?
She was an MP, wasn't she? She was an MP from one of the West Yorkshire places, significant, senior enough, one of the first ones to speak out. And in the end, I think she had a police protection in the end.
Yeah. Of I think it was on the Blair government, Brown government.
So this is the thing. At the height of the Labour Party government, when they were in power, when there was no reason for her to speak out, she spoke out. That's for me, that's powerful. It's not a political benefit for her to speak out, but she spoke out.
Yeah, and was penalised by her own party. It was called a racist. It was called a far right. All the same sort of rubbish we hear all the time. But she was an MP for the Labour Party, and they went for her because nobody will talk about this. And that's what it was a couple of decades ago. But people are swapping sides now because people naturally want to be on the winning side. And that's how I know things are changing. Let's talk about you. So since January 1st, you've hit national attention. You've been on some huge podcasts. Unfortunately, GB News and Talk TV have ignored you, which I'm very surprised about. My only thinking there is their solicitors are worried sick because you name names, you talk about people, and I think maybe their legal departments are going, oh, we can't afford a big court case being sued by someone who's...
I don't hold it against them, Nick. I speak to the reporters offline. I supply them with information. They check in on me. I check in on them. There's I think you can see people who've seen me before. Because there's no ego here with me, Nick. I'm a very down to earth man, and I'm happy, to be in a room with people. I don't need to be the center of attention. I have no desire to be. It's not in my DNA to want to behave like that. If it was in the old days, Nick, I would be one of the policy team that dots the I's, crosses the T's, gets all the work together and makes sure that the person I'm working for looks good and, does the right thing. And that's how it was for me. And that's where I prefer to be. So I now realize that, as well as doing this and going on the podcast and having to go out of my own comfort zone, because all of this is out of my comfort zone, Nick. It's it's not just something I've learned to do. It's something I write, Nick. I don't put my face in front of people like this. That's and if you follow my work, you'll see that, and I believe I write well, and I communicate things in writing better. But I look at this, Nick, and I think we've got people on our side. We've got at least two national media platforms in terms of Talk TV and GB News on our side. Why would I want to pick a fight with them? Absolutely.
Exactly. I'm sure you don't.
I look at I look at Reform. I look at Rupert Lowe. In terms of politicians who I think are genuine, I believe that man to be genuine. He comes out with stuff regularly, and the way he presents himself, I think, there's a man with honor and dignity there who wants the right thing for this country in the same way as we do, and I support him. I'm not a Reform member I'm not a political member of any party, but I look at Reform, and I don't want to pick a fight with Reform. I've seen, is it Ben Habib, who, and they're arguing over the logistics of whether Reform is a private company, whether it's that. I look at it in a more pragmatic way. I think the political party is in its infancy still. It's developing. The systems and processes need to catch up. And we need to try and inform and shape. Now, if you believe that's, if there's only one show in town for people who believe like us, I think more and more so. The Conservatives are just playing at this. Labour will fight us till the end. The Lib Dems think we're the scum of the earth, yeah? And the other parties, like Nick Tenconi's party, UKIP and so on, they haven't got, at one, the infrastructure to mobilise nationally to actually deliver results. And secondly, if I'm pragmatic with where they're at, they're really more a pressure group to make sure that Reform don't forget about the white working class and don't forget about some of the issues that, and some of the stronger policies that otherwise would be overlooked. And on Saturday, I saw their march, and it was to do with remigration, wasn't it? Remigration event effectively means send them back, yeah. And what do we mean by send them back? It's not sending me back. It's not sending, some Jewish person back or Ukrainian person. It's sending back criminals to the countries. If they're convicted and they're here, why bother? Why give them a second chance and third chance to stay here? Send them. And I think it's for the likes of us to take that righteous anger and frame it in a way that's palatable to as many voters as possible and inform and shape what Reform do. So I know at some point you'll clearly be speaking at events between now and the next general election, as will I. And I've took the decision where I will now speak at political events. So any political party, Nick, who's interested in hearing my perspective, I will go and speak at their events.
And that's how it should be.
We've got to take that genuine, legitimate white working class grievance and frame it in such a way where the genuine far right and the genuine extremists can't hijack it. That's how that's how I see my role for the next 3 years or so, Nick.
The people who talk about Reform and ask me about Reform all the time, my answer is this. Imagine all the political parties are buses, and there's a destination you want to get to. And on the front of Reform tells you where they're going. So get on the bus. But if they take a wrong turn, or you realise they're not going where they said they were going to go, get off the bus and wait for another bus. So at the moment, Reform are the only game in town because we know where the Tories are going to take us. Nowhere. We can see where Labour's taking us. It's to rock bottom. Lib Dems are mental, not a chance. The Greens are the most mental party.
They've become extremely radical, haven't they? They've become
absolutely. They would have us living back in the Stone Age, farming on bits of land, all of us, and starving to death. That's what the Greens would want for us. But Reform's the only game in town. Are they perfect?
And they're speaking our language, where they're genuinely taking the time. I mean, I've spoke to Rupert. And he's not the only one I spoke to, but I've spoken to Rupert. He took the time to call me and took the time to respond. Now, I'm sorry that I've got to acknowledge that for what it is. Here is a man who's took the time. I think it was on a Friday night he called me, but he took the time. And there are others in reform I'm trying to engage with. The challenge we've got, and you've seen it yourself, it's a party in its infancy, and it's still, in the same way it's developing its policies, there are still people being drawn to it who believe that reform will be this extreme right, racist sort of platform where they can promote themselves, and it won't. And if it won't, it's for people like us to make sure it doesn't. I'm my own. I mean, I currently live in Tameside. I'm scheduled to meet the reform team here this week, next week, because I want to help them. I've seen what they're doing, and they're in their infancy. It's like a child learning to swim. It's like a baby learning to swim. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, hold on, Roger, you live in this town. I live in Mosley. It's in Tameside. I live in this town. Oldham's next door because I'm safer where I am, Nick. Because if I lived where I wanted to live, my house would be burnt down. It's no more complicated than that. And I look at reform and I think, okay, help them, join them. And I say to people who ask me, well, go and join. When John, be part of the solution. If instead of complaining about things, we're now in a different space. The space we're now in, we've never been in. Not in my lifetime, Nick. We've never been in this space. We've got national media agencies who will amplify the issues we care about. The likes of Charlie Peters, the show after show on GB News, Talk TV, daytime, nighttime. We've got a whole host of podcasters. They call us the alternative media. I have a different term. It's the majority media, because the majority of people now engage in platforms such as yours, in this sort of podcasting sort of world. The majority of people engage in this arena. We've got these people on our side. We've got more and more respectable, professional people having these conversations. Everywhere I go, I sit in rooms with doctors, with professors, with accountants, with lawyers. They're of this same mindset. This country has lost its way. Our democratic systems and processes have broken down, and they are being exploited by individuals who do not have this nation's best interest at heart. And we have to reform our society and our way of life to protect our way of life. Otherwise, what will follow does not bear thinking about.
So, Roger, I can't let you go without asking the question I always ask you. What's going on in Oldham? Anything new happening there? We know it's the most corrupt council in Greater Manchester, if not probably the northwest of England, maybe the even country, who knows? What's going on in Oldham?
Well, we've outmaneuvered the council. It was at a meeting 2 Wednesdays ago, an extraordinary council meeting. If you follow my work, I've been asking people to write to their councillors to demand an extraordinary council meeting, and we led the way in Oldham by demonstrating how it's done. So we had the Conservatives, decent people, Lewis Quigg, Dave Arnott, principled men who called an extraordinary council meeting. Every Conservative councillor signed that document because he needed 5. And they didn't just give 5, every one of them signed the document. Extraordinary council meeting where they took a motion to the council wanting the rejection of Yvette Cooper's local inquiry, which we know has no powers. It's just, kick into the long grass and hope it goes away. And demand 1, a statutory local inquiry into the town, and 2, support a national inquiry that everyone is asking for. We knew, and this is what we did, Nick, we knew that the Labour Party would try and outmaneuver us and vote against it or amend it. So we played a game with them where we put forward the language in such a way where it was aggressive, it was over the top. We played highball. It's what you do as a child. Mum, I'm coming in at 11, knowing that maybe she'll negotiate down to 9 o'clock rather than your usual time of 8 o'clock. Yeah, we did that. It was a child's game we played with the council, and we outmaneuvered them in the council meeting. The council meeting's online. You'll see it. They had to stop the council meeting, rewrite some minutes. And in the end, 59 of the 60 councillors attended that meeting. All 59 of them, some of them after shouting and swearing at me, effectively, if you watch it, you'll see. And I'm not in the meeting, I'm a campaigner. This is, is that not what I'm meant to do, Nick? Campaign, yeah? So I campaigned. All 59 of them voted with this. And let me share it with you. So you laugh. One, that the inquiry in Oldham has got to have statutory powers. So Yvette could to write to the Home Secretary to say the inquiry in Oldham has got to have statutory powers. Having another local inquiry with no statutory powers is a complete waste of money. Don't bother. So now we've got the council that Yvette Cooper wanted to work in partnership with to prop up her continuation of a cover-up, rejecting her offer. So we've got a local council writing to the Home Secretary saying, what you want to do, we don't support. We want a statutory inquiry. So that'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Secondly, we've also got the council now to write to the Home Secretary again, saying, by the way, we also support a national inquiry. And this needs to be investigated across the entire country. So the council at the centre of this cover-up, 7 times, I think, Nick, over 5 years, voted against it, had me repeatedly arrested. We have now outmaneuvered them. And it's Labour Party run still, it's minority, but 27 Labour Party councillors out of 60, with a couple of independents that propped them up. Every one of them, including the Islamist separatists, we played them as well, the Muslim separatists, every one of them voted exactly as we wanted to. And they're now writing to the Home Secretary on 2 issues. One is the inquiry you want in Oldham is no good to us. We want it to have statutory powers. And by the way, we also want the government to launch a national inquiry, because what's happening in Oldham has happened across the country, which is, so we're clear, the systematic cover-up of the predominantly white working class children. So by Pakistani heritage men. So that played out. Okay. The third thing then, the 2 letters, the third thing, we've drawn Andy Burnham into it. So as well as writing to the Home Secretary, the council is also writing to Andy Burnham. Remember, Andy Burnham is neck deep in this because it was his assurance review in June 2022 that it was the 20th of June, 19th of June, 20th of June, he published it, his assurance review. I was the only person, Nick, who challenged it at the time, said this is a cover-up. I went through all 200 pages of it. I released something on YouTube on the 21st of June, 2022. I've just reshared it now on X this morning. It was taken off for defamation by YouTube. Right? And all I did was detail, within 24 hours, begin to detail the inconsistencies in the report and why it wasn't fit for purpose. It took Burnham 2.5 years until January 2025, just last month, before he acknowledged the limitations in his assurance review. So he's switching sides. Well, mate, if you're going to switch sides, let's have it out in the open. So we forced the council to also write to the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and Andy Burnham specifically to confirm, to request that he issue a statement confirming that he wants a statutory inquiry into Oldham and a national inquiry. So that's what we forced just under 2 weeks ago, which I think is it's an achievement.
No, absolutely. It is an achievement to force the council to do anything. Labour are worried sick about this. All the Labour councils are worried sick about this. We saw what happened in Wigan a few weeks ago, where independent councillor Maureen O'Byrne, she forced that council to write to government to ask for an inquiry as well, and that's a Labour council. Something's definitely going on within the Labour councils. I not only are they protecting themselves and looking after their careers, I think they're beginning to look in the future and thinking, I could end up in jail. If all this gets out, I could end up in jail.
I want to see politicians in jail, and Andy Burnham when he ranted at me. I mean, since you and I spoke, he bit on X on a Sunday night. I think he must have had a glass of Merlot, too many glasses of Merlot or whatever his preference is, and he bit and he demanded I take down my post. I said, well, I'm not taking down my post. I'm going to testify at a national inquiry, and he claimed he's going to testify as well. I said, good, I'll see you there. I will see you there because your assurance review in Oldham was a cover up and you fronted that. That was your assurance review. And it took you 2.5 years to say, to even acknowledge it was limited.
I saw that.
Two guys have run away, haven't they? I mean, Newsom and Ridgeway have run away.
Yeah. I saw that X discussion, not live, but I saw it the next day or something. And correct me if I'm wrong, he said something like, I've got answers to all these points you're raising, Raja. And then you put something like, well, that's great. Can we have them, the answers?
Yeah, well, I offered. I'll come and
that seems to be the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I said, I'll come and see you. He said I was a liar because apparently I claimed he'd given Sean Fielding's girlfriend a job. I never claimed he'd given Sean Fielding's girlfriend a job. I said his office, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority had recruited the partner of a council leader.
And that's either true or not true.
Yeah. And you and I know then if there's any question of something untoward taking place, then it's a simple review of CVs and to see, well, actually, did this person come from a place where they had the skills and capabilities to be appointed into the role they were appointed? That's an objective exercise, isn't it? But that's got nothing to do with the issue, with the issue we're talking about, which is the systematic cover-up of child abuse.
Yeah. One last point before we go. I was quite surprised. You will already know this. But I was quite surprised a few weeks ago to find out that the former leader of Oldham Council, Amanda Chatterton, and for our listeners, she's the one a year or two ago stood up in a chamber and said something like, being groomed and gang raped doesn't necessarily ruin your life.
Oh no, it didn't destroy their lives. Didn't destroy lives. It wasn't. There was no even opt out. You can't say it destroyed their lives.
So absolutely, you've got to be mental to think that and to say that. But now she's working for Yvette Cooper at the Home Office.
And so I released the information, Nick. I had the information, and it's like other bits of information I've got. There's a time and a place, isn't there, when you release things for maximum, value, for to have the impact we want. We removed her as Oldham Council leader. We voted her out. Yeah. And we voted her out on one issue. And that issue was what she claimed. You can't say it destroyed lives. You can't say it destroyed their lives. And she continued to prop up and vote against the public inquiry. I took to the streets of Royton South, where she was a councillor. I took to the streets of Royton South. We created an independent movement and supported an independent councillor who'd never stood before and got her over the line. That's what we did. The police arrested me during the campaign and clearly told me that, we have arrested you to stop you from campaigning. So that's the background to this. As soon as we removed her, and this is why it's sinister. This is why we know there's something darker. She did her job of fronting and protecting the Labour Party. And in return, the Labour Party protected her and continued to support her. And they gave her a job. Yvette Cooper gave her a job as her campaign manager. So it's not just working in the Home Secretary's office. She was appointed as the campaign manager of Yvette Cooper, a woman who was removed from council for her, in a safe Labour seat, in a ward that had only ever had Labour councillors. We removed her, and she's, by running a community-funded campaign led in the main by old age pensioners, Nick, we removed her through a grassroots campaign, and then Yvette Cooper appoints her as her campaign manager.
This is the dirty world of politics, isn't it? if you look after me now, if you happen to lose your seat, we'll get you a good job within the Labour Party, within government, and you'll probably be financially better off. This is those backroom deals that help us today, I'll help you tomorrow.
The leader of Oldham Council, Arood Shah, we removed her a couple of years ago when she was the leader before in South Chadderton. We can't touch her in St. Mary's. It's a Pakistani cartel stronghold. It's just not possible for us to mobilize in that place. But in South Chadderton, where there was a white working class demographic, we removed her there. We removed her with a conservative candidate there, not an independent, a conservative. And she mysteriously turned up as chair of the National Constitutional Committee of the Labour Party. And now she's Andy Burnham's equality lead.
Yeah. Oh dear. I mean, yeah. And that's why
So someday, you and I, there'll be a documentary on this, Nick. There'll be a documentary on this someday. Hopefully, you and I are still alive rather than in the credits, and we get to see it.
Well, I think Denzel Washington will play you.
Well, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
And I think someone like Steven Seagal will play me.
Well, that'll do me.
That would be a blockbuster. That would be a blockbuster. Well, there'll be more to come on this, and there'll be more to come from you over the next few months. So,
and if there's one thing I can say, please, Nick, if you'll hear me, please, people, go and join Reform if you care about this. Go and join a political party. Go and join the Conservatives if you believe the Conservatives can be the change. No, 100%. But if you don't believe that, go and join. Be the change. Be part of the change. We need your help. Without you, we can't do it. We need your help.
And also follow people like you. Support people like you. I
run a little newsletter, Nick. My following online, open following online, is very low, and I get emails all the time, Nick, from people saying they're too scared to follow me. They're too scared to support me. How do you think that makes me feel? I'm the man with a 10-year-old daughter.
Yeah. And nothing's going to change if we all keep remaining cowardly. Nothing will change. I'll put all your details in the description of this video. So people will go in the description, find all your contact details, your newsletter, everything. So I've made it easy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
I've made it easy for people, because unless people like you get more support by the average person, then, we'll still be in this mess. 6 years of hard work you've done, and we're getting there. I can see the end of the tunnel now, but, things can U-turn. Things can,
and they'll fight with every last breath they have. They'll fight against this. They will not come to where they need to go willingly, will they? They're not going to go willingly. We'll have to force them.
They have to fight tooth and nail, because this will be the end of lots of them. They've got nothing else to lose. They have to fight and keep people like me and you quiet, because when it all comes out, that if it comes out in their lifetime, I'm like you. I'm expecting some people to go to jail,
go to prison. They will go to
expecting it. Yeah. Absolutely. And we need that. We need to hold some of these people responsible, so the lesson can be learned around the country that this sort of corruption, this sort of turning a blind eye, this is not acceptable. And when you found out, you go to jail. Just like Mike Ainsby, MP, Runcorn, punching that guy to the floor and hitting him. 10 weeks in jail. I never thought he'd go to jail. I thought...
I'm disgusted that he got 10 weeks in comparison to...
In comparison, it sounds really bad, but I tell you, if me and you would have spoken a week ago, I was of the...
A suspended sentence. I was expecting a suspended sentence.
2 years in jail, suspended for 2 years. That's what I expected. The fact he's been sent to jail, even though it's only 10 weeks, even though when you compare it against other stuff, is a change. We have rapists and paedophiles. They don't go to jail sometimes. So I'm amazed he went to jail, which again shows us things are changing.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for coming to the show, and let's catch up again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.